Hi YouTube, it's Brittany Keys, and today I'm going to be doing a video on graphing sine functions. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the most basic one, which is y equals sine of x. And we're going to graph this function. And from there we can get a general understanding of what most sine functions will look like. And also we're going to get some help from the unit circle. But I don't have the full unit circle. We don't really need it right now. But what we can do is we can look at what I drew here. I just drew just the 0 and 2 pi, pi over 2, pi, and 3 pi over 2 coordinates because that's all we'll really need for right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this graph here and we're going to start plotting our points and just doing whatever we have to do to get the graph. So first, of course, we have 0 right here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take pi over 2 and place it here. Then we're going to do pi. Then 3 pi over 2. Then 2 pi. So if you noticed, I did 0, then pi over 2, then pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same for the left hand side. So first will be negative pi over 2, then negative pi, then negative 3 pi over 2, and negative 2 pi. So we're done with our x-axis, and for our y-axis we're going to put 1 right here and negative 1 right here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to plot our values. So we're going to need to know what sine of 0 is, sine of pi over 2, sine of pi, sine of 3 pi over 2, and sine of 2 pi. We're going to need to know what those values are. So if you look here, sine of 0 is 0 because sine corresponds to the y value of this coordinate. So we put 0. Sine pi over 2 will be the y value of this coordinate, which is 1. Sine of pi is 0. Sine of 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. And sine of 2 pi is 0. So next we're going to do the negative values. And if you remember, sine is an odd identity, so you can do sine of negative x and they'll equal to negative sine of x. So remember what we're doing now is we're trying to get the values that we'll plug in for the y and x values. So we have sine of negative 0, which is just the same thing as negative sine of 0, which is negative 0, and it's 0. Next we have sine of pi over 2, which is negative sine of pi over 2, which is negative 1, negative 1. Sorry, this should be negative. So we have sine of negative pi is equal to negative sine of pi. That's equal to negative 0, which is 0. Then we have sine of negative 3 pi over 2. That's equal to negative sine of 3 pi over 2. We know that 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. So that means this is minus negative 1, which is positive 1. Then we have sine of negative 2 pi. That's equal to minus sine of 2 pi. 2 pi is 0, so this is negative 0, which is 0. Okay, so now we have everything we need to plot our points. So at 0, sine is 0, so we plot in our 1. At pi over 2, sine is 1, so we go to pi over 2. We go up to 1. We put it here. Next, sine of pi is 0, so we here at pi, and sine of pi is 0, so we put it at 0 on the y-axis. Next we have 3 pi over 2. Sine of 3 pi over 2 is negative 1, so we go down and we plot in our negative 1 on the y-axis. Then we have sine of 2 pi is equal to 0. So once again, at 2 pi, we plot in 0. So now let's go to this side. So we already have sine of 0, sine of negative 0, and sine of 0 is the same. So we've already plugged it in. Next we have sine of negative pi over 2, which gave us negative 1. So at negative pi over 2, we go down to negative 1. We plug it in there. Now we have sine of negative pi, and that is equal to 0. So at negative pi, we plug in 0. Now we have sine of negative 3 pi over 2, which is positive 1. So at 3 pi over 2, we go up to the y-axis at y equals 1. Now we have sine of negative 2 pi, which is 0. So we just plug in our 0 here. Now what we do is we just connect the dots. So we have a graph like this. Just connect the dots. Oops. Connect the dots. And that's really how a graph looks. It looks like this. This is the pattern that sine functions will take. So, do you see here how we have a point and it went up, then it went down, and it came